is a Fox Business special report.
Last night, the world's most notorious hacking group pushed out this ominous tweet. You've got to take a look at this. Here it is, quote, "Wonder if tomorrow is going to be bad for Wall Street. We can only hope." That was from Anonymous. And this morning, major symbols of American capitalism did indeed have a very bad day. First, United Airlines shuts down, we're talking 35,000 grounded planes because of a computer glitch. And then the traders on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, they were shut off from their trading systems by a mysterious system. We still don't know what happened, but everything down there just stopped working. And then later, a website issue hampering employees and users of the Wall Street Journal. United Airlines, New York Stock Exchange, Wall Street Journal. These coincidences could not have come at a worse time for investors in the midst of a global economic turmoil and yet another major down day for stocks. Now, I get that China, Greece, at this moment, they loom larger. But if these cyber incidences are more than just a coincidence, if they're coordinated, if they're connected, this becomes the biggest story of the year. And we've got all the bases and angles covered for you with very powerful guests tonight. I'm Charles Payne, and this is a Fox Business special report. Let me introduce you to the panel. Starting us off right out the gate, our experts on the markets, Hillary Kramer, A&G Capital CIO and President, Tammy Bruce, Fox News political contributor. Joining us from Boston, Peter Tran, Senior Director for RSA Worldwide Advanced Cyber Defense. And joining us from Los Angeles, Kurt Knudsen. He's the cyber guy. Nice to see all of you. And Kurt, I'll start with you. Hey, we've had 3 events, right? Okay, all cyber issues, all automation issues. It seems very odd to me, and it's hard for me to believe that these are coincidences. What's your take?
Right. What's in the air today, right, Charles? I'm talking about what would appear to be a coordinated attack on the infrastructure technically in these 3 big institutions. But the fact is, still, official word says no. There was no sort of hacker that did any of this. It was not a malicious thing. That these are just unrelated glitches that just coincidentally happened all at one time. Beginning this morning, you know, NYSE, the stock exchange this morning, even before trading opened, they had a little bit of a glitch that we learned about later. And the director of the floor there, Art Cashin, he came out later and said, well, earlier this morning, before we stopped trading, we did have a little bit of a technical glitch, and they didn't report it then. But after the New York Stock Exchange decided to stop trading, and that was at 11:32 a.m. this morning Eastern Time, right. Boy, did the world wake up to this. And that was him saying at that point, all right, we're shutting down trading, we're suspending it. Now, this is the first time, the first time in, I'm thinking since 2013. It might have happened before, but August 2013, remember, there was a technical glitch that shut it down before that. And then it's otherwise, it's world events that have shut down the stock exchange no more than 7 times in the history of the exchange since, I believe, 1817.
And the
so
point,
finally,
though,
they started to recognize they had it.
And it wasn't just, Kurt, the New York Stock Exchange. In fact, it began with United Airlines with some sort of incredible glitch that somehow kept all 35,000 planes grounded there. But I want to take everyone back before today. At the beginning of the week, major news in your industry, the cyber industry, and I think it was best described in Wired magazine. Here's a quote from them. "Few news events can unleash more schadenfreude within the security community than watching a notorious firm of hackers for hire become a hack target themselves." They are talking about the firm out of Milan. They're for hire. They're considered corporatists. They work for corporations and government. And Peter, I want to go to you. Many were thrilled to see that these corporate for hire elitists, if you will, were themselves hacked. Really, this is what the Wire said, that they were decimated, that they were disemboweled. I kind of connect the dots to that, to these other corporations, large, big, well-known corporations, all being targeted this week.
Well, first off, I'd like to play a little word association. When you hear planes grounded, stock exchange halted, Wall Street Journal offline, what comes to mind?
9/11.
For me as a security professional,
9/11.
9/11,
yeah.
Hack. Okay, so we at RSA go beyond the association and prepare and think about the unthinkable. So if we look at this from a multi-threaded attack perspective, potentially you're talking about an ecosystem that is far beyond what we can think about. It makes Chernobyl look like Disneyland, right? So hackers are running things like a business. So what we fail to realize...
Before we talk about that part, Peter, yeah? let's do this, because again, I don't know that everyone watching the show understands how dramatic the events were today, and help me understand the timeline of these events. You talked about the key words and the word associations. It begins with an airline. United Airlines, before the market opens, somehow mysteriously a major glitch forces them to keep all of their planes on the ground, and this lasted for a fair amount of time. Then into the trading session, the first thing we heard from Nicole Pantelidis was that 220 stocks weren't trading. To Kurt's point, mysteriously, initially there were 220 stocks that for whatever reason they weren't trading, and then not long after that the entire floor went dark. It could not trade. And then, of course, after that, the Wall Street Journal had major issues with their website. We walked through these things one after another. How could that? I mean, even mathematically, you don't have to be any kind of nut. You don't have to be any sort of conspiracy theorist to think that maybe these things are connected, Peter.
So let's step back and look at this in isolation. Let's start with United Airlines. So in isolation, you look at 35,000 grounded planes. So what impact does that potentially have? And then you look at the stock exchange halt. When you think about this in isolation and you don't make the leap of faith connection that all three are connected, they individually have impact into what we call cyber economics, right? The manipulation of economics and markets over time. So hackers are running things like a business. So underground networks where they buy and sell malicious code for future attacks. If Harvard had an MBA for hackers, China and other nation states would have them hanging all over the wall. So if you look at what we fail to realize, it's not just an attack, it's a long-term business proposition. They have a business plan similar to the way that we run our businesses and we trade and sell on New York Stock Exchange.
Kurt, to that point, I want to talk about some of these major attacks, these attacks that people watching this show, households, I think we've got some of them we can actually scroll, have seen over just in the last year. We're talking JP Morgan, 83 million people impacted. Home Depot, 56 million people impacted. Staples, 1.1 million credit cards were breached. Anthem, the healthcare provider, 80 million people impacted. Primera, 11 million people impacted. And those are just some of the larger names. Of course, there were things like the Sony hack. These look like pure cyber crimes. But by the same token, what we saw today, it felt to me perhaps not necessarily a cyber crime, but a cyber warning, the hacktivism things, the things that you get from an anonymous and so forth. What's the danger there for you, and how plausible is it that that's what we saw today?
You know, I'm not even going to give the anonymous, the tweet they put out yesterday saying that, oh, I wonder what's going to happen on the wall, on the New York Stock Exchange tomorrow. I really am just not going to give that credibility yet. So let's just pull that out of the equation. What I do want to focus in on is the fact that you're right. These three major events happened, and to top that off, at the same time, the Chinese market is absolutely plummeting. But one thing is certain. Because of JP Morgan and Target and all of the companies that have shown us how weak we are in our cyber infrastructure, be it in our financials or be it in our country's strength, I'll tell you right now, I think that actually was a gift to us. I think today we walk away and we say, uh-oh, how is my 401k? Uh-oh, how's my retirement account? But the fact is, we were able to look at the very same time and see that the NASDAQ was unaffected. We were able to say that, you know what? At the end of the day, they got it going again, and my money's still there.
The point that you're making is that parts of the system failed us, and yet the system overall still worked. And I get that part. I think that's important and critical, although we still close at the lows of the session, and there's absolutely no way that people can feel good about this. I'm going to go to you, Hillary, on that. The mood of individual investors, seeing something like this, first thing you think of perhaps is flash crash. And then, as Peter connected the dots, wow, maybe it's even worse than that. It's certainly the memories that it brings back are worse than that.
Investors were so concerned. They were so upset. Even level-headed institutional investors thought the worst, and with good reason why. Because this was real cyber terrorism. This wasn't even just a theft of credit card information. This was a warning shot, and this was a way to rile the whole markets. Where do you get people? You either get them in their physical security or you hit them where it really hurts, which is money.
In their wallets. All right, guys, we are joined right now by phone by the former chair of the New York Stock Exchange, Dick Grasso. Dick, I've got to say thanks a lot. I know a lot of people were trying to grab you today, so it's an honor that you chose us. And, earlier in the show already, we've had one of our cyber experts say, think about the word association. Airplanes, New York Stock Exchange, Wall Street Journal. obviously you have to flash back to the days of 9/11 and, of course, the days after 9/11. You were there. You opened up the exchange against all odds. You became a national hero. But today there was absolutely nothing to celebrate. How do you make of what happened today?
Well, first, Charles, it's always a pleasure to be with you, my friend.
Same here.
I think we have to. I think we have to separate what happened at the stock exchange from the Wall Street Journal and United Airlines, at least until there's conclusive evidence that they are, in fact, linked. You know, the NYSE, I'm told, had a software change installed last night. And oftentimes when that happens, you know, there are unintended consequences of a new software addition to a very complex technology infrastructure. So, I think evidenced by the early morning issue, it may well be that the NYSE stands alone. Charles, are you there?
I'm here, buddy. And
Okay.
here's what I want to ask you, though, Dick, on that point. Listen, we know they've got circuit breakers. When things aren't going well, they can slow down the market. But what happened here? Okay, I get you changed software around. We kind of get that a little bit. But it was really very odd here, Dick, because, listen, I don't know if this would have happened when you were running it, but the whole thing felt like a fiasco from the events that took place and the way it was handled afterward, Dick.
Well, I would say this, Charles. You know, and you heard Tom Farley, who was a terrific young leader of the exchange. It was not his best day. You know, if they had been more communicative early on and simply said, you know, it may well be that there are other technical issues at United Airlines and at Dow Jones or at the Wall Street Journal, but we think, we're not sure, we think we may have caused this internally because of an overnight software change. I think people would have been a lot more comforted that this was not a full-scale assault on America from a cyber standpoint. Now, you know, you learn from every instance. I think what the NYSE has learned is that it's got to be more communicative, particularly with the media, because you've got the media right there. Nicole Petalini did a fabulous job today from the floor of the exchange. I think had they kept her a bit more in the loop, you know, investors would have been more comforted.
Yeah, I agree.
Remember, Charles, as I know you know, stock exchange-listed securities now trade in 50 different venues.
Sure.
So it wasn't as if there were no markets available. The question is, how reliable were those alternative markets? And we really don't know the answer to that question because New York is the primary price setter.
It is, Dick, but I want to ask you, though, on that note, and I think maybe even on a personal level for you, when I watch the screens, and, you know, of course, Nicole, to your point, did a great job. I think she could have been helped a lot more by the team down there, but when you watch and I watch, what I saw was a very lonely sight in that hour, almost 2 hours that they were shut down. Very few people around. It just felt empty. It felt like the only thing that was missing was perhaps tumbleweed. And a lot of people say, listen, this underscores the fact that the floor has become obsolete. You just talked about all the other avenues of trading. Is it just the fact that maybe the floor isn't needed anymore, the New York Stock Exchange floor?
No, I would not agree with that, Charles, from the standpoint that the opening trade each day and the closing trade being far more important to create centralization because all of your mutual funds, all of your major institutional accounts are valued off that closing trade. And what you really need to validate the legitimacy of that closing trade is centrality of price discovery. Where I'm a little concerned about what happened today, Charles, from an investor standpoint, is that there were 700,000 orders in the system of the NYSE that had to be canceled. The question becomes, how many of those orders got rerouted to other markets, and were those investors served by those other markets?
Right. Did they pay more or get less for what their sales were? I want to tell you, though, Dick, and you talked about it already, our own very own Nicole Petalini, she was on the floor at the very moment that it happened. And I want the audience to take a listen to understand, because this was a shocking moment. Take a listen.
Surely.
Straight to the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, Nicole.
Charles, Charles, a moment ago, all the stocks here on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange were halted. We're talking about over 3,000 names that trade here on the floor of the exchange. These names can trade away, so they can continue trading. In the meantime, though, you can see the posts behind me. You can see the traders mulling about as they keep going to the ramp to try and get the latest.
Dick, I'm getting the wrap signal here, but I just want your final thoughts on that. That was a very scary moment for me. And again, it just harks back to the things that are not too far in the recesses of my mind, and I'm sure not too far in the back of yours. You're really comfortable and confident that there's no connection here, because I just don't think it's a coincidence. These three giant pillars of American capitalism all going down one after the other.
Well, Charles, look, at this point, it would be premature to say that it is. And on my part, I'm speculating, having run that infrastructure for so many years, that if they had an overnight software change, there's a high probability that that software change was the culprit in the NYSE's glitch today, not something externally. We'll know in the days and weeks ahead, and New York has got to be transparent.
Absolutely.
And tell the investing public exactly what happened here.
You know, Dick, I would love if somehow, maybe tomorrow, the next day, you could actually go down there and help them ring the opening bell. You were absolutely amazing in the days after 9/11. We love you for it. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll hopefully have you back on soon.
You're very sweet to say that, Charles.
All
and
right.
I love the great job Fox has done today.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thanks a lot, Dick. All right, again, the New York Stock Exchange, that system was down. We had a 4-hour outage there. So exactly how vulnerable are we, and how these events can